It's July 19, 2024, and the streets of Houston, Texas, were about to be forever marked by a brutal crime. But before the tragic end to Merseana Struggs' life, her story began in a small town in Louisiana. Born and raised in Marrero, Louisiana, Merseana always dreamed of something bigger than the limitations of her hometown. Her early years were filled with the typical struggles many face in small, working-class communities. Still, she held on to a vision, an ambition to break free from poverty, to create something better for herself, and most importantly, to give her child the life she never had. In pursuit of that dream, Merseana made the bold decision to leave Louisiana behind and move to Houston, Texas. The city offered the promise of opportunity, the kind she couldn't find in her past life. She arrived with nothing but the hope that her future would be different, that the sacrifices she was willing to make would pay off. Houston, with its vast possibilities, became her second chance. It wasn't long before Merseana joined the growing community of individuals making a living through social media platforms, specifically OnlyFans. She knew that this would be her way to provide for her family in a world that demanded both resilience and creativity. Her OnlyFans account became her main source of income. Charging $35 a month for exclusive content, Merseana ensured that her interactions with fans were strictly digital, no in-person meetings. She built a successful platform, offering her content to those who appreciated her artistry without crossing boundaries she wasn't comfortable with. By staying true to her business model, she carved out a space where she felt in control, making the most of the opportunity while maintaining her personal boundaries. Her online presence grew, and with it, the financial rewards. But success, as many know, can attract not only admirers but also those who can't see past their own desires. Yet, through it all, Merseana stayed focused on what mattered, providing for her child and making sure she had the life she deserved. But even as she built her empire, the shadows of jealousy and control loomed just around the corner. It was in Houston, amidst her growing success, that Merseana met Nicholas Finley. He was 34, older than her by 5 years, and at first, he appeared to be a man who could complement her life. He wasn't rich, but he seemed grounded, someone she could rely on, a partner in a world where she had to stand on her own. Their relationship started in a simple way, like many others. He became someone she trusted, someone who shared in her joy as she found success in her new career. But beneath the surface, Nicholas began to reveal a side of him that Merseana could not ignore. It started small, with subtle signs of possessiveness, questioning her whereabouts, the people she interacted with, and especially the time she spent online. It wasn't long before he began to make demands, each more unreasonable than the last. Nicholas's jealousy took root in the very platform that allowed Merseana to support her family. He resented the attention she received from her fans. What began as a simple request to control her online interactions soon escalated. He started demanding a share of her earnings. His reasoning was simple: as her boyfriend, he deserved a portion of the money she made, as though her success was something he was entitled to, too. His jealousy grew with every new post she shared, every client interaction she had. Soon, the online world that Merseana had carefully built became a battleground. Nicholas tried to impose restrictions on her content, telling her what she could and couldn't post, trying to dictate how she ran her business. His emotional manipulation was clear: if she loved him, she would comply. If she didn't, the threats would start. The arguments grew in intensity. He began accusing her of neglecting him, of being more loyal to her fans than to him. The emotional toll began to wear on Merseana, but she continued to work hard. Nicholas's anger, however, began to turn physical. The fights became violent, with each clash revealing more about his controlling nature. Merseana began to see the relationship for what it truly was: a cage. The man she had trusted, the man she had built a life with, had become her jailer. The more she tried to break free, the tighter his grip on her became. It was during one of their many heated arguments that Merseana realized she could no longer stay. She was done being controlled. She was done with the emotional abuse, the manipulation, and the fear. The person she had once loved had turned into someone unrecognizable, someone who only sought to tear her down. It was time to leave. But as Merseana would come to learn, leaving him would be the most dangerous decision she would ever make. On the afternoon of July 19, 2024, the tension that had been building for weeks finally erupted in a violent confrontation that would end Merseana Struggs' life. The argument between her and Nicholas Finley, her boyfriend of several months, was nothing new. But this time, things escalated in a way that left no room for reconciliation. Nicholas was angry at the idea that Merseana was planning to leave him. It was a threat that had been repeated more than once, but today it was different. Today, he wasn't just angry. He was determined. "You're leaving me. I'm going to kill you if you do," he told her. Those words were heavy, filled with menace. Merseana, realizing the severity of the situation, began to run. She had made up her mind. She would no longer endure his emotional manipulation, his possessiveness, or his constant demands. She was ready to escape. She dashed through the apartment complex, desperate to find refuge. She tried to hide in a neighbor's car, hoping that the distance would be enough to protect her. But it wasn't. Nicholas was relentless. He caught up with her, and in that moment, the worst fears Merseana had tried to outrun became a terrifying reality. As she collapsed on the ground, trying to find an escape, Nicholas stood over her. There was no hesitation. He opened fire, shooting her repeatedly until the gun was empty. No mercy, no second thoughts. The scene that followed was a gruesome testament to his fury. Nicholas didn't just kill Merseana, he robbed her of everything, her life, her dignity, and even her belongings. After he had taken everything he wanted from her, including her purse and car, he fled the scene. But the damage was done. Merseana was dead, and her once bright future was now gone, extinguished by a man who could not control his jealousy. Eyewitnesses reported the terrifying moments leading up to the shooting. A neighbor recalled hearing gunshots and seeing Merseana's frantic attempts to escape. She described how, moments before the shots rang out, Merseana had tried to run to safety, only to be pursued by Nicholas. The neighbor, who had not known Merseana for long but had admired her kind heart, felt the horror of watching a woman fight for her life. One eyewitness, who had witnessed the chaos firsthand, remembered hearing the words, "I'm going to kill you," as Merseana fought desperately to get away. The shooter, Nicholas, was described as cold and unfeeling as he continued his attack, firing multiple rounds until Merseana fell motionless. The senselessness of it all is staggering. A man, claiming to love Merseana, took her life over something as trivial as money, a demand for a share of her earnings, a demand she refused to meet. His desire to control her, both emotionally and financially, had driven him to take her life in the most brutal way. This was not a moment of passion gone wrong. It was cold, calculated violence. Nicholas Finley's actions were a reminder of how dangerous possessiveness, control, and entitlement can be when left unchecked. What had started as an argument about money ended in a murder that shocked the community and left those who knew Merseana mourning a life lost far too soon. After the horrific murder of Merseana Struggs on July 19, 2024, the police were quick to respond to the scene of the crime. The brutality of the act left everyone shocked, and the investigation began almost immediately. The authorities worked swiftly to piece together what had led to such an unforgivable act. Nicholas Finley, who had fled the scene after murdering Merseana, was quickly identified as the prime suspect. The evidence was clear, with witnesses recounting his violent pursuit of Merseana and the shooting that followed. Within hours of the crime, police began a manhunt for Nicholas. His capture came soon after, and he was arrested and charged with capital murder. The severity of the charges reflected the gravity of the crime. Not only had Nicholas taken the life of the woman he was supposed to love, but he had done so with cold calculation. As the investigation progressed, it became apparent that Merseana's decision to leave him was the cause for the violence. His obsession with her earnings and his inability to control her had led him to take her life in a senseless act of rage. The public reaction to Merseana's tragic death was one of disbelief and sorrow. Her story, once about ambition and a woman trying to provide a better life for her child, had turned into one of heartbreak. News outlets across Houston covered the story extensively, highlighting the dangers of toxic relationships and the terrifying consequences of intimate partner violence. Many were left wondering how a relationship that began with promise could devolve into such brutality. The overwhelming sadness at her untimely death was shared by those who had known her, those who had supported her from the start, and even those who only knew her through her online presence. The statistics surrounding intimate partner violence in the Houston area shed light on the larger issue that Merseana's death represented. Between 2019 and 2022, intimate partner violence and domestic homicides in the area had seen a troubling increase. A University of Houston study revealed that intimate partner violence homicides in the city had doubled over a 3-year period, a trend that mirrored a nationwide surge in such crimes. In 2022, alone, intimate partner violence accounted for 35% of the murders in unincorporated Harris County. These statistics were a stark reminder that Merseana's case was part of a much larger and more disturbing pattern of violence that had been on the rise in the community. Murder victims from intimate partner violence were far from just numbers. They were individuals with lives, dreams, and families left behind. In Merseana's case, the impact on her family was devastating. Her young child, who had relied on her strength and love, was now left without a mother. The loss of Merseana, a beautiful woman who had worked tirelessly to build a better life, was felt deeply by those who loved her. Her family, already coping with the challenges of life, now faced the added heartbreak of losing someone who had been both a mother and a dreamer. The emotional toll on her family was overwhelming. Her mother, her friends, and anyone who had known her, struggled to comprehend how someone who had worked so hard to carve out a future could have her life taken away in an instant. The tragedy not only robbed them of a loved one but also of the potential she held. Merseana was a woman who had made a decision to rise above her circumstances and provide a better future for her child. She had been full of life, ambition, and love. To see that all of it extinguished by a man who had once been her partner, someone who should have supported her, was an unbearable sorrow. As her family grieved, the case sparked broader discussions about the need for increased awareness and action regarding intimate partner violence. The loss of Merseana Struggs was a harsh reminder that far too many individuals, especially women, suffer in silence in relationships marked by abuse and control. Her tragic death has, in many ways, become a symbol of the need for change, a call to address the increasing rates of domestic violence and to protect those who are most vulnerable. The tragedy of Merseana Struggs' death was not an isolated event. It was a painful reminder of the hidden dangers that lurk in relationships where control, manipulation, and abuse thrive. Recognizing the signs of an abusive relationship is often not as simple as it seems. Abuse can take many forms: emotional, physical, psychological, and financial, and often begins subtly. What may start as a jealous outburst or a controlling demand can slowly evolve into something far more dangerous. Abusers typically use tactics to manipulate and isolate their victims, making them feel as though they are the cause of the problems in the relationship. They may slowly strip away the victim's independence, making them feel powerless, while also reinforcing their belief that they can't escape. The abuser's behavior often intensifies, growing more threatening and violent, as they attempt to maintain control. These tactics can be insidious and difficult for someone experiencing them to recognize, especially when love and emotional attachment cloud judgment. For many, leaving an abusive partner is one of the hardest decisions to make. It's also the most dangerous. Domestic violence experts often say that the period of time when a victim tries to leave an abusive relationship is the most perilous. This is when abusers feel they are losing control, and their violence can escalate as they attempt to regain it. It's not uncommon for a victim to be threatened with harm or even death, as was the case with Merseana. The fear of retaliation can keep someone trapped in an abusive situation, even if they know they need to leave. It is critical to acknowledge that leaving is not a sign of weakness, it's an act of survival. Domestic violence survivors need support, resources, and a clear safety plan to ensure they can leave safely and rebuild their lives. There are various organizations, hotlines, and shelters available to help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, for example, offers confidential support 24/7 for those experiencing abuse. They provide resources for safety plans, shelter, legal assistance, and counseling to help victims regain their independence and safety. Another valuable resource is local domestic violence organizations, which provide in-person support, resources, and emergency housing. It's important for survivors to know they are not alone and that help is available. Having a safety plan, which includes identifying a trusted person to reach out to, knowing where to go for shelter, and having essential documents and belongings ready to take, can make all the difference in an escape. When it comes to addressing domestic violence, one key factor is the need for society to recognize and confront toxic masculinity. Too often, men are taught to believe that dominance and control in relationships are signs of strength. This misguided view not only harms women but also damages men by pressuring them to suppress their emotions and act in ways that contradict healthy communication. True strength in a relationship lies in mutual respect, trust, and understanding, not in controlling or belittling a partner. The rise of possessiveness in relationships also speaks to a deeper issue, one of insecurity and fear. Many abusers, like Nicholas Finley, are driven by feelings of inadequacy, and instead of seeking help for their emotions, they turn to violence. The need to control their partner becomes a reflection of their own internal struggles. This cycle of emotional instability needs to be addressed through better education and greater emotional intelligence. Healthy relationships are built on communication, empathy, and mutual respect. Teaching people, especially young men, to value equality, to communicate their feelings without resorting to manipulation, and to understand the importance of consent and boundaries can prevent abusive behaviors before they start. Education in schools, communities, and families can lay the foundation for more respectful and equal relationships. In Merseana's case, her story serves as both a tragic loss and a stark reminder that we must change the narrative surrounding relationships. We must move away from the notion that love justifies control and manipulation, and instead, create a culture where emotional support, healthy communication, and mutual respect are prioritized. As we reflect on her life, and the heartbreaking end to her journey, we remember that domestic violence is an issue that affects us all. By speaking out, providing resources, and promoting education, we can help ensure that no one else has to endure the same pain that Merseana and so many others have suffered. It's not enough to wait for change, it's time to actively create it. Merseana Struggs' life was tragically cut short by the very person who was supposed to protect her. Nicholas Finley's violent actions have not only left a community devastated but also robbed a young child of their mother, a woman who had worked so hard to build a better life. This senseless act must not go unnoticed. We must stand together and call for justice for Merseana. Her death cannot be in vain. The fight for justice in Merseana's case is far from over, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure that those who commit such violent acts are held accountable for the pain they cause. Her family deserves justice, and the truth behind her tragic end must be heard. We owe it to Merseana's memory to speak out and demand that such crimes are addressed with the seriousness they deserve. In this moment of grief, we extend our condolences to Merseana's family, friends, and loved ones. No words can ease the pain of losing someone so vibrant and full of promise, but we can honor her life by raising awareness about the dangers of abusive relationships. Let her story serve as a warning about the consequences of unchecked jealousy, control, and manipulation. If you are watching this, share this video. Let Merseana's story reach as many people as possible, so others may recognize the signs of abuse before it's too late. It's essential that we all stay vigilant and aware of the dangers that may exist in the relationships around us. If you are in an abusive situation, know that you are not alone. Help is available, and there is always a way out. Stay safe, look out for each other, and if you or someone you know is in danger, reach out for support immediately. As we close, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the importance of healthy relationships. Let's continue the conversation, and let's support each other in building communities that are free of violence and full of empathy. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can stay informed with more stories that matter. Thank you for watching, and please take care of yourselves and those around you.